Erling Haaland recently signed a new long-term contract, 10 years to stay at Manchester City until 2034, with this being one of the most lucrative contracts in English football history. I'm not an expert in math, so you guys are going to have to give me a little bit of a break, but what I wanted to do for this video is break down how much he's making and what are 10 things that he can purchase with all of that money. Stick around until the end because it's going to get more and more expensive as we go. So before we start, let's take a look at the figures. His new contract puts him at 500,000 euros per week, which means that's 610,000 US dollars. And for the purpose of simplicity, because I'm not European, I'm going to base everything off that number and keep things in American currency. And because this is more of a fun video, we're going to pretend like we're in Saudi Arabia where there's no personal income taxes. And to be honest, because it's so lucrative, there's reports that he could be earning close to $1 million a week with all of the add-ons, loyalty bonuses, and image rights payments. So we will say that all of that can go towards taxes. So $610,000 a week multiplied by 52 weeks in a year means he makes $31,720,000 per year guaranteed. And if we multiply that by the 10 years, he's set to make $317,200,000 by the time he's 34 and his contract is finally over. Before I start with the first item, let me know in the comment section what you would buy if you were set to make that much money. So let's start the possible purchases with some smaller, more everyday type things. After all, we do know that Erling Haaland likes to... And one thing he does like is a carrot on his way to work. And he's going to need a lot of carrots to stay healthy if he wants to last the 10 years. So a fresh 1-pound bag of carrots from Walmart comes out to $1.08, which means Erling can buy 29,370,370 pounds of carrots each year. Of course, that would be a huge waste of money though. So let's move on to something slightly more expensive and maybe more useful. The next item Erling needs to make sure he purchases on a consistent basis is hair ties, especially if he decides to keep his hair long throughout the next 10 years. Let's figure out just how much he can splurge on hair ties. A 70 count bag costs roughly $8.91 on Amazon, which means he can buy 3,560,044 packs. And that means that he's going to end up with 249,203,142 hair ties. The only problem with that is that there's only 31,536,000 seconds in a year, which means he would have to go through 8 hair ties every second of every day for an entire year, or he would end up with excess hair ties. But once again, another useless purchase. So let's move on to item number 3. And something that finally is starting to be a little bit more relevant and expensive: Premier League match balls. If Haaland decides he needs a few extra match balls to do some individual training at home or take to the beach and kick around with some friends, he would obviously go to soccer.com where he could purchase an official Premier League match ball for $167, which means he could purchase a total of 189,940 balls off of 1 year's salary. Somebody better be checking my math throughout this video because I'm pretty sure there's been some mistakes already here somewhere. But if my calculations are correct, Haaland would obviously have more than enough footballs to train with. So what would he do with all the extras? Well, he could sponsor the next few Premier League matches by paying for the balls himself. And considering each Premier League match uses 10 new footballs, Erling Haaland could sponsor the balls for the next 18,994 Premier League games, and that's just 1 year of his wages. And with there being a total of 20 teams playing 38 matches, there is a total of 380 matches played each season. So with 1 year's wages, Haaland could pay for all of the match balls for the next 50 seasons of the Premier League. So in 2075, Haaland would actually have to start using his second season salary if he wants to continue being the official Premier League match ball sponsor. But he probably gets footballs for free being at Man City, so let's be realistic. He's spending his money on something much more interesting than footballs. PS5s, of course. Who doesn't love video games?
Any video games, or do you watch anything?
I do these normal things as well. I've been playing a bit on my, in the years I've been playing FIFA. I actually play a bit of Minecraft with my friends.
The world's most used gaming system. Let's take a look at how many PS5s Erling Haaland could purchase. A PS5 will run you $500, which means he can purchase 63,440 PS5s in a single year. And obviously he only needs one. So who's he going to give these to? Well, why not give them back to the people that are actually paying his wages? The fans and supporters of Manchester City. The Etihad Stadium is currently under some renovations and expansions, specifically of the North Stand, which when completed will see the Etihad's total stadium capacity be just over 60,000. So let's say at the end of the season, the last home game at the Etihad before City are relegated to the Championship for the breach of financial fair play rules resulting in 115 charges, Haaland could buy a PS5 for every person in the stadium and still have 3,439 PS5s left over, with him keeping one for himself, of course. And while we're on the subject of electronics and technology, let's take a look at item number 5. As a person having to deal with agents, sponsorships, big money deals, and probably a lot of people asking for money, Haaland is going to need the latest iPhone to stay connected with them all. Not that it's any different than the last 5 models, but of course he's going to want the best iPhone he can find. So if we go on Apple's website, we can find that it costs $1,798 for the most spec'd out iPhone with 1 terabyte of storage in desert titanium and with the added 2 years of Apple Care Plus. And let's say Haaland wants to give back to all of the Man City employees for everything they've done for him, because as you know, he bought all the fans PS5s and he's such a good guy. So in year 2 of his contract, he's not buying PS5s for the fans, but instead he's buying iPhones for all City employees. At $1,798 for the best iPhone money can buy, and with there being roughly 2,212 total employees on Man City's books, Haaland can afford not only just to buy each one an iPhone, but he can actually buy each one almost 8 iPhones, or 7.97 if we want to be exact. Maybe they can give the other 7 to their family members for Christmas. I'm starting to think this imaginary Erling Haaland is such a nice guy, he's buying presents for everyone. Fans, co-workers, who's left that isn't his family? Well, his fellow colleagues. And that's where the next item comes in. Out of respect for all the hard work that his teammates and other Premier League footballers put in on a daily basis, let's say Erling wants to make them all feel like the royalty that they are. And when they get home, they need to relax and feel appreciated. So because I was running out of items to look for that Erling could buy in this price range, I somehow stumbled upon a webpage that listed a bunch of ridiculous items that someone could buy if they had all the money in the world. And number 1 on the list, at a whopping $34,052, was a full-size replica of the Iron Throne from Game of Thrones. So once again, based on a year's salary, Haaland could buy 931 replica Game of Thrones chairs. And with there currently being 553 Premier League footballers, Haaland could buy them all a chair and still have 378 left over, which he could give to their wives or partners so they could feel like royalty also. Assuming there's also some single players that wouldn't need a second one, of course. And I think with this, we're finally at a point that Erling Haaland has given back to enough people and he should start buying some things for himself. Because after all, if he's managed to get himself this contract, he deserves it. So item number 7 is something that I feel like everyone thinks about buying when they finally made it. And that's a dream home. And this is probably the only part of this video that's actually somewhat realistic, because I only looked at houses in Manchester. And surely Haaland isn't going to be buying a home to live in the United States or in another part of England. If he wants a short commute to work, we need to find him a place in town. And after a little bit of research, the best I could find listed for sale and the most expensive home in all of Manchester is the luxurious Charles and Candace estate that comes in at 11.8 million US dollars. Don't ask me what it has or how big it is. All I can tell you is that for $11.8 million, it better have everything he needs to make him happy. And if he does decide to buy it, he still has $19,920,000 left over to furnish it and make it even nicer and more luxurious than it already is. So he's bought his dream home. How else can he show off how much money he has? I don't think there's a better way to show off how rich you are other than to show people that your time is important. And in order to keep track of the time and the money he's making, Haaland needs a really nice watch. Not just any watch, he needs a Rolex. And so I was looking around to see what types of Rolexes there are, and he could go for the Submariner, the Yachtmaster, the Explorer, but if he really wants to have the best, he needs the Daytona. And not just any Daytona, but he needs Paul Newman's Rolex Daytona, reference number 6239. Why this one specifically? Well, because it's the most expensive Rolex ever sold, and the person who purchased it paid $17.8 million back in 2017. And sure, there's more expensive watches out there. For anyone who's a watch collector, this is definitely not the best that money can buy. But Rolex is probably the most universally recognized watch brand, and flexing that you have the world's most expensive Rolex and still have $13,920,000 left over in that same year is unbelievable. And just for curiosity's sake, I did search up the most expensive watch ever, which comes out to be the Patek Philippe Grandmaster Chime, reference number 6300A-010, which sold at auction in 2019 for $31,190,000. So yes, Haaland could buy this watch instead on just a year's salary and own the most expensive watch in world history. So he's got a house, he's got a watch, he's got all the nicest toys out there, but there's one more thing that he's going to need: a dream car. And although he may not want to use this as his daily ride, he's got to be able to tell his friends all about his car. Now, I personally don't know what Haaland's dream car is, but if he's negotiated this extremely expensive contract, then surely he wants the most expensive car that money can buy. And while it's not the easiest thing to find online, it's widely believed that the Rolls-Royce Boat Tail is at the top of the list, coming in at a whopping $26.2 million. So while Erling may not be able to buy multiple boat tails, at least not off of 1 year's salary, he can proudly say that he's currently the only Premier League footballer who can afford it. The second highest paid footballer in the Prem is Kevin De Bruyne, making $25,402,046 a year. So unfortunately for De Bruyne, he cannot manage to buy the Rolls-Royce Boat Tail unless he saves longer than a year to do so. And while Haaland may not want to spend almost an entire year's salary to own it, at least he knows he's the only one that can. The last possible thing that Haaland could or would want to buy has got to be the thing that he's most passionate about and what got him this contract. football. Well, of course, he can't buy football in its entirety, but as many other rich celebrities have done, Haaland may want to think about investing in his very own football club. So while this may not be something that he can do with just a year's salary, let's say Haaland wants to go big. Forget starting in the lower leagues and working his way up. How much is it going to cost Erling Haaland to buy a Premier League club? Well, he can't afford Manchester City, that's for sure, but he can afford Ipswich.
Ipswich Town returning to the Premier League for the first time in 22 years.
And based on the fact that they recently sold a 40% stake in the club for right around $108,186,750, that means Ipswich Town is worth $270,466,875. So if Haaland wanted to be the sole owner of a club in the Premier League after he retired, he would be able to do so after 8.5 years of his contract, meaning he would own 100% of Ipswich Town and he would still walk away with $47,580,000 to spend on whatever else he wants after retiring. And that's not bad for kicking a ball around for a living. So let me know in the comment section down below, what would you buy if you were making the same amount of money as Erling Haaland? And if you appreciated all the work and brain power it took me to use a calculator, please consider subscribing to the channel. We'll catch you guys in the next one.